Hello, Internet, and welcome back to Literally Me Theory. This is your host, Samuel Creighton, and today we are concluding part 2 of our series on Antonio Ramos and his connections to darker forces. Last episode, as many would recall, we discussed the ways in which post-cognition and quantum entanglement could have resulted in several incidents in history that Antonio could have been involved with. After all, the Middle East and Princess Diana were no accident. You see, but there's something I've been withholding from the humble viewer. Antonio has attacked me directly. You see, it was a night much like many other nights. I was doing my heavy research into Antonio, and coming out sweatier and stickier than usual, I thought better to take a shower. Now those of you aware of the movie Longlegs will be reminded of this, but what was most strange about that night was that someone and something in my home had begun to move differently. My cat George started by standing up on his hind legs, and me, sweaty and sticky, I didn't notice, but what was most particular was the vile odor that was coming off of him. It was malignant. Now, what happened next was most disturbing, however. That strange odor coming from my feline friend was none other than a fecal fright. Yes, dear viewer, Antonio Ramos had shat my walls. Deeply traumatized, I barely noticed when the cat had begun to lunge at me and strike me in the back of the head with a move I could only describe as a mix of judo and wrestling. I got flung backwards. I flew out a window into the night. But I knew that day that Antonio Ramos had cracked the ability to possess another being. Now, dear viewer, this begs the question. Osama bin Laden, Saddam Hussein, Dodi Al-Fayed, that driver who killed Princess Diana. Are these people being possessed by a Ramos? Or is it something much, much more dubious? MKUltra, or Project MKUltra, was an illegal human experimentation program designed and undertaken by the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency, or CIA, to develop procedures and identify drugs that could be used during interrogations to weaken individuals and force confessions through brainwashing and psychological torture. Brainwashing, as many know, has many effects on the human body. Delirium, delusions, as well as other nausea-style effects. Could it be that Antonio Ramos had once worked for the CIA? Let's find out. After all, it could be that Antonio had employed CIA torture tactics in the past, including but not limited to on women, children, as well as animals. A particular example of this being my dear Joseph Diego Ortega, who suffered many nights of an experimental torture known as Beep Boop Bop, for which Antonio would pin him down and poke him repeatedly, over and over and over, like Chinese water torture. Deeply traumatizing, would not recommend. But I saw in those actions a potential signaler for what Antonio could have done. You'd think I forgot, Antonio? No. Your crimes end here. But that's just a theory. A literally me theory.